Morning everyone, happy Friday. I want to share something with you that excites me. I love making my grey. I've talked to you a bit about that before and done a bit of mixing of greys. I make all my greys, but once a year, Gamblin put out a torrid grey. And basically it's all the leftover pigment from all of the oil paints that they make, and they mix it all up and they make wonderful greys. And the greys are never the same because depending on the different pigments and the sediment, they can come out at maybe a little bit of a pinky grey or a greeny grey, bluey grey, and they vary so much. That just excites me. I adore it. My art supply very kindly keeps a little tube of torrid grey for me. They don't sell it, they give it away. And when I get that tube, it's like gold. I love it. So it got me thinking about making greys, and I recycle all of my solvent in my studio here, and I'm going to show you a bit about that. And then I'm going to try and make my grey using the sediment in the bottom of the big tub. So stay with me and let's have a play. Okay, so what I thought I would show you here is a bit of dirty solvent. I don't use a lot of solvent because I use palette knives, but when I do my underpainting, so I've got all the dirty solvent in there, my beautiful Vegemite jars, love them. Give it a bit of a swish, and then I pour it off into this big container in a funnel, and then that gradually gets filled up, settles over time, and then after a while all the sediment settles to the bottom, and then I can pour off recycled solvent in a new, so it's got a slight orange tinge because there's pigment that's been in there, but the pigment and the sediment separated. This is the recycled solvent, and then I can use that for painting. So that's the first thing that I do in terms of recycling. Don't ever throw it down the drain or anywhere. Right, so I've got my container, all the liquids come out. I'm going to cut it open and we're going to get into some of that pigment that's settled at the bottom of, wow, look at this. It actually looks like chocolate ice cream. Do not eat. That's gorgeous. I can already see where the grey is heading. It's heading towards a pinky grey. Who knows what's right down below? So that's a good 15 centimetres of pigment that is settled in the bottom of this big 4 litre container. And is it 4 litres? Yeah. I'm going to show you how we can mix that with some oil, linseed oil, and make some paint. So I've put a white palette on top of my palette because I want us to be able to see the grey that we're making today. So we're talking oh wow. So this is actually really interesting. Look, it's a bit of an experiment. When I oh wow. When I pull back that top layer, you can just see all of the colours coming through. Now, this is influenced by whatever paint I'm putting into, whatever solvent I'm putting in. And the layers are actually, they're all very different. Some are forming a skin. I've got some greens coming through. There's a lot of pink and orange. That might say that Sarah likes to use a lot of pink and orange, perhaps. There's some blue. Blue is obviously a really strong pigment. I'm just going to scoop a bit out. Who knows what's going to happen? I think what I'm finding is, as I mix through it, you can see it's like marble ice cream now. As I mix through this, I'm finding there's a bit of skin down. I've got gloves on. Do not do this without gloves on, please. Yeah, there's some skin, like this skin has formed. I'm going to put a bit out on the palette and see if we can soften it and mix it with something to get a nice grey paint. So I've scooped a bit out, and as I push through it, you know, I've got blues and oranges, and some bits are a little bit hard. As I said, that's the skin. Yeah. That's literally a bit of skin that's formed. I'm not going to be able to soften that, I don't think. Interestingly, mix it in with a palette knife. It's an absolutely beautiful, it's leaning towards a warm grey. You know, those gorgeous earthy tertiary greys. You know, you can go to the store and buy a grey called Australian grey or whatever. It might cost you a fortune to buy it. But what I'm trying to talk to you about is the fact that we can make our greys, because it's really a combination of a whole lot of pigments. So I'm finding the lumps and bumps in here aren't really going to be nice to work with, unless that's what you want. The colour's gorgeous. I've got some refined linseed oil here. You know, if you pop a bit of that in it, I probably don't need it in this batch because it's actually very wet, but the linseed oil helps soften it and bind it together. It already had a bit of moisture in this lot. That's actually helping soften it. You know what I would use it for is a ground to, you know, do some underpainting. The archival quality of it potentially concerns me because of the amount of solvent that's been through it. I don't know. Look, it's a really interesting experiment. What you can do to shift that grey, I've got a bit of cadmium red here, a very strong pigment. I'm going to put a whisker of that in it. Look at how, wow. So see how that red influences, this is a gorgeous, now it's heading towards a reddy pinky grey. That's Elizabeth Cummings grey, I would say. I reckon she can own that colour because she is the queen. Eat your heart out, Elizabeth. I adore your greys. Look at that. I mean, just a hint of cadmium red in that grey. I hope you can see that. Oh, see, I find that just magical. So you can shift your greys by influencing it with other pigments around from your other palette. It could be a wonderful base colour. It's a really neutral undertone that you could use for an underpainting. So there you go. I've had a bit of fun, and maybe have an experiment and see whether you can do that at home.